Obviously all better.
Better, yes. Knock on wood. Like to keep it that way.
Sure, definitely.
A short while ago.
Chiarelli.
That's exactly what.
It's okay. Bonnie takes a lot out of you just to get back.
That?
It's like there's one person.
I hope not.
I've been using Ed from Coyote Oil for.
Good, yeah.
Well, I started off.
There was that before.
And then I bought a new boiler. And right now, since installed it, switch over. I'll give you until they sold it out.
Leslie, do you want?
Then I called that.
Okay.
So are you checking people that bailed on you?
Right.
Yeah.
She was the
All right, I'm gonna give him a call. It's almost too late.
Not too late to save $200.
Copies? Hi. I'm not special. Sorry, no, what? Very early morning.
You had it before?
Just look at it.
This month. Do you want the budget as well? The expenditure and the revenue budgets?
Can I have that?
That's far enough away where if something goes wrong.
Okay, that's right. Tyler,
Good for you.
Where is it?
everybody we don't know. Caught a crosswalk? I don't know. So welcome to the select board meeting for Peterborough, Tuesday, March 7th. With me, as always, is Bill Kennedy. I'm Bill Taylor. This is Nicole McStay, our town administrator, and our assistant to the town administrator, Ally Croce, is right next to her. Lily's with us. We're gonna have a budget meeting at 6. But right now, we're gonna hear from the Affordable Housing Subcommittee about an authorization to apply for the AARP Challenge Grant. Fire away, is that you, Carol?
That would be me.
Have that.
Thank you. Can I call you Mr. Chair?
Acting.
Acting chair, thank you. Thank you so much. So, yes, James is here with me as a representative from the Affordable Housing Committee. No, not Tyler. We are asking for your support. We would like to apply for an AARP Challenge Grant. It's a grant that happens every single year through AARP, and we specifically are applying for one to have an ADU design competition. You should have gotten a summary, 3 pages of information.
Yep.
And happy to answer any questions you might have. The deadline for us to get it submitted is March 15th.
Have you been filling out the application already?
Danica has, yes. Yep.
She's pretty matchable.
Well, thank you. This wasn't actually that cumbersome of a grant to get through, so we have everything kind of ready to go. We just want to make sure that we're in the blessing of the select board to submit that application.
What could go wrong?
So this is for designs for ACU buildings that people can purchase reasonably priced.
Right.
They've already been pre-approved by the code officer, so it makes it a lot easier to
Precisely.
get through that, from what I understand.
Right.
I think it's a great thing.
Right. So through the work of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, they were researching what our ADUs look like in town right now, what the process is, and they realized really, for the most part, you really have to hire an architect or some sort of designer to put together those building plans, which has a big price tag involved. In researching how to streamline that process, they came across this grant opportunity so that you can have several plans available on file for residents to be able to license, likely for up to $1,000, which significantly reduces the cost for them to be able to do an ADU. Yep.
What's the grant worth?
We're going to be applying for $15,000. $15,000. There's no match required for it, so we're not proposing to use any funds as a match for this. This would be solely coming out of the funds that we're requesting for them.
Is there a downside? Possibly be a downside?
Oh, I just wondered.
Oh, don't forget, you need to announce who you
Oh,
are.
I'm sorry. I'm Leslie Lewis. I'm just curious. if this goes through and you get the grant and you get these, you know, plans that people can buy, how do you let people know that that is available to them?
Right, that's a great question. So one of the things that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is going to be doing that's going to be sort of the jumping off point for this is that they're going to be doing 2 ADU seminars in June, and that's actually just about the time period that we would be hopefully getting the grant awarded to us. So on one hand, that will kind of be the first piece of information that goes out into the community that we're doing this work. Hopefully we'll get interested people who come to join us for those seminars, like residents who are interested in adding an ADU. Then they know that probably sometime in September we will have plans available for them to use. We'll also be doing some regular outreach though around it anyways, like social media, things in the newspaper.
On the website?
Yep, dispatch.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anybody else? So do you need motion? Magic wand?
Yep, just a vote to authorize, who would be submitting the grant? Danica, is it going under, yes, so authorize Danica to apply for the AARP challenge grant.
So moved.
I have to say.
That's right. The only one left.
It's a terrible version.
Yeah, so all in favor?
We'll make it unanimous.
So authorized.
Thank you.
Thanks for following up.
Yeah, that's-
This is great.
That's a really cool idea. Next, we're gonna vote to approve or not approve expenditure from the fire department apparatus and equipment capital reserve fund in the amount of $11,802.75 for the purchase and installation of Turnout gear dryer. Anybody have any questions about that one? I don't. I've heard about it enough.
But we had allocated funds for this, what was it, last year?
Yep,
And then the quote went up.
yes, as they often do now.
Surprise, surprise.
I think we authorized it a while ago. We authorized it maybe last year based on a quote from even prior to that.
Could have
So
been.
that was bound to happen. Is that Bill? Want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
There's a question.
Oh, geez.
Leslie?
So I know nothing about equipment, but is this something that is installed in such a way that it can be moved to the new firehouse?
Yes. Most
Very
definitely.
important.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a gigantic dryer.
That's really what it
Well,
is.
that's why I was wondering
If it got stapled in somehow that you couldn't move it.
You did check on that. Believe it or not.
I believe you.
Bob Herringsmith, is it an electric dryer, perchance?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay,
Gotta check that.
thank you.
So what, we had a motion, a second, any more questions? Anyone? We had a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done. Next, vote to approve or not approve an expenditure from the Helen Brown Fund for the $70,000 ambulance lease payment. I'm assuming that's just this year's lease payment for the 2019 F-550 ambulance. Anybody have any questions about that? This is a fund, so it wouldn't be coming out of taxpayer dollars,
Correct.
which is great news.
Yep, and this is a portion of that payment, the rest of it comes out of the ambulance service revolving fund.
I'll make that motion. Approve it.
We'll second that one. All in favor? Anything else? What else do we need to get done?
That's it, blasted through the whole agenda.
Bunch of sitting around now.
Now we just hang out till 6.
All right, everybody you take 20 minutes off. Hey, let's find out what's going on with Tyler.
They can't do the next
Call him.
meeting.
Maybe you didn't see the 5:30 time, but.
He may have seen the 5:45.
Yeah.
So show up at 5:30.
Did you
And
find which
it
one?
probably would have been better at 5:45.
What's that?
You found which one you wanted?
I did, yeah.
Danica.
I forget the name of it.
You escaping, do you think?
I was going towards that fan.
It was like, it was.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Quick question about filing, or how the files, building permit documents are done. Is it possible to identify quickly which building permits relate to solar arrays?
We're gonna try to
Or to heating system changes?
It should be fairly easy. Every permit is received in a 1-year cycle. Goes into an Excel spreadsheet and it'll say, and we'll call them like, what's it for? So you can
Oh,
search.
it's in an Excel spreadsheet?
Right,
That's
so
all
you
I
can
need
just
to know.
search for solar or for heat pump or something like that and it'll pop up.
Tyler?
Okay.
Yeah, are you looking for like a time period?
No, I'm just thinking ahead to keeping our data up to date.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we
So
already
on
had
an
the
annual
select
basis,
board
we can
report.
send you what's come through
You all
for
right?
this year. Yeah, that'd be fairly easy.
Turns out we didn't
Yeah.
need
Okay.
it.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna go
Carry
get
on.
myself. Big organization. But anyway, I recommend.
No, we have to have.
Well, I was given to the press, it was all gussy up today. Came down and I was like,
Yeah, we need to talk about that some more.
We all missed you.
I know.
Yeah.
Could you see me change your name?
That wasn't very nice, Bob.
I said we all missed you.
Yeah.
That should have been.
Oh, that would have been.
I think I got up and thought.
Well,
I don't know, I got a little taste of power.
yes, I know. He was organizing a coup while you were.
Good job.
Yeah, I almost ran over the steels to see if it.
I know.
It originally was, yes.
Yeah.
Right back to 5:30 when.
Yeah, so it was really great when I got there.
Is it really 20?
Hey, Chief.
Stick you out here.
Okay.
Basically.
Chief,
I know.
Same badge.
I saw something.
Fine. Poised to make a quick exit if you need to.
If you work
On your
from the
replacement
left
yet,
side, and you go over,
Haven't gotten approved.
you can see the two fields that open up, the one and back one.
That's 40 years. God, it was like that. Another
Not that one, lower. My house is right there. Exactly.
Yeah, at this point, I won't remember them.
there was one that said, they just, where you were.
Where's the
Same idiots.
Top of that, no, it's just before the summit, on the Raymond
We're
Trail.
back.
It's right at that notch at the parking lot.
It's just below that, actually. You have to go down a little bit to get that exact view. That was my favorite place to stop when I was climbing.
I don't know, I can see some stuff on, where this goes up off of Kaufman.
What do I
I can see some of those houses.
There's more coming this week.
You can see lights, but I don't think you can keep.
Concealed carry, things like that. Where he's like, I used to look for somebody who says sheriff every year. And he had them looking in the face.
One of my favorite things in town.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Obscured now with foliage.
Where's our
Along the border.
Actually, yeah.
It seems like. Well, ever had one. That's the test.
Yeah, you just about have to climb a tree or something. to see it.
Years ago.
It's wide open.
Yeah.
He's working on doing the short sleeve.
When I was a kid, yeah, there was all orchards, and they would come through, until the 90s, I think.
I heard you were going to
You go like the peak of that hill and look in the same direction. A lot of them see. You can actually see my skin. Open view.
What's that?
He told me he wants to come out and drive through and see some stuff.
I'm also-
That's it.
Sunny, and then all of a sudden I looked at it. I just didn't do anything. It was chilly.
No, I do. Like I said, I set up something and then.
I was laughing.
Same boat,
It was a long way.
White is idyllic as it used to be.
they don't have
Would you like to sit here so that you stand to your high chair?
A couple miles in.
Tree's kind of nice. I kind of like tree.
Yeah, why don't you take it over, because they already have
It looks like Princess and the Pea.
Exactly, I just don't want to like,
Sure. Why don't you open it?
the load goes down to 100,000. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's kind of making sense. Apparently there's another camera that has see me on Portland and like, that took a picture of me at last week's meeting and it was like this. Like walking well, I would. A part of being sitting back here in Maryland. No,
You tell Lily
there's
about
not enough
the,
seats up there was the river that I started. And now
Andy, did you tell Lily about the entertainment she provided during our meeting?
Well, I did. Well, I also joked because I had to tell Patrick that I felt like in the second meeting, it was like the movie Groundhog Day because literally like 7 minutes into the meeting, both times Bosch went into the bathroom, and like 26 minutes in, like Lily laughed really loud, and like all of us looked up, and I was like both meetings, and I was like, is this sort of dangerous meeting like this?
And then he said you had a pretty good outburst directly outside the door.
Oh yeah, that's right. There was like one traveling around, and I was like, I don't know where you are, but yeah.
We were laughing about that, and probably the people that were being interviewed thought we were laughing at them.
Yeah.
I thought we discussed keeping Lily in check.
They're like, what? Again, I think Tim was like, oh no, and they didn't even notice that they like
Seth
they didn't hear
did
it.
come in and just say to mind my business. No music.
Oh my gosh, no! I said I'm sorry, the construction company can't handle a little laughter and music that like you really want them managing the project.
Well, I was thinking like worst case, they'll think it's a fun atmosphere and people to work with.
Absolutely, that's the best case, right?
I think that is owned by writing, I believe. The problem is if they, if they use pure they want to build something that's so in that do anything to bring
obviously.
That's why that one.
She was a
You tell them what we took out, and that probably told
Exactly.
She just went out over again. We certainly don't need to belabor.
We'll try not to say
That would be my.
We're just reviewing the review.
Exhausted your repertoire? Mine would be over in about 2 days.
So, yeah,
And it would be tuna casserole.
this is really good.
We're having to have for the second. I always wondered why that's before, and I think it was all.
You can vary the pasta, it's all about the salad.
Planning board and all that. I was wondering if you see what happened.
the most amazing thing ever. She was like, and I go, no, have you done it with Jody's family? Like that's really, they're not even did that. Yeah. Yeah, she goes, yeah, I go, really?
Everything went real well.
I didn't steal anything right now.
Sorry, I'm going to He was constantly for complimenting. I did say
One of my cousin-in-laws called. Just something I made up. And I was wasn't on curve. They loved it. Just weird.
Some stuff in the fridge together. It's coming. Or some
Before the meeting starts, there are copies of the updated budget, expenditure, revenue, and the copy of the warrant, if anybody wants those.
Well, because you can get like pre-drawn.
My brother buys the liquid.
So we'll take copies of the warrant.
Did you say
Don't forget the revenue.
The revenue.
Oh, and the revenues.
Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff. Hey, you want revenue?
Everybody wants revenue. You guys all good?
Thank you very much.
I don't know what to do with this. I don't give it. Ask me, like, I'll give it a tab.
Oh, yeah.
She has. Well, this one.
Hey, Lisa.
Plus the hospital. I was in,
There's copies of everything.
Now we're just stamping it, all the departments come back. Really all we're doing is just stamping and stuff tonight. Now you make you come all the way back.
It was on the plan.
Guess
What's that?
Oh, yes.
That's the difference.
Hey, watch your meeting.
The good news is you make sure. I watched last.
Yeah, I've heard this.
he's like, I was.
That's why I stamped you guys.
Right, he was like, I was pissed. He was like, I was like,
Oh, maybe I'm thinking.
That's what I was like.
She was like literally running towards the library. I was like, oh, somebody grabbed them.
I know. I see it in RGS.
They still so you didn't realize you called it?
I mean, we spent the first hour and a half like which is even worse.
I actually just learned, so I didn't know what the 911 support, and I just went to it's still long. No. Yeah, even if, so they say if you ever do it by accident, stay on the line and wait for them to answer and tell them this was an accident. And then stop. But once you're in queue, they have to have your spot. And so it's like, yeah. So, because you know,
on your side.
yeah, so that's like, still my side.
What does Tim think about it?
Oh, yeah.
He'll talk.
No. Yeah.
I don't know if like the expenditures and things for the draft.
Calling 911 on your son is easier than calling me. That's because you're a little Don't do it.
You guys are like,
Don't do it.
They may end up building stuff.
The guy lost life. I knew that wasn't good. I mean, that actually mine's worse, but
No, yours is worse. We'll give you that.
but it's one step.
It's supposed to be harder. It's supposed to be relieved on these really hard, so like down, under, sort of half the I know, but so
It's not. It's
well, unfortunately, you're supposed to write that because they've only.
so vertical.
That was just a 35-year-old
So do you see
Will.
Yeah, these are the ground dry now. So you like open it up and you're just like, that's a This took me like 5 minutes. At least he cared. I'm surprised here.
Pretty process.
Hey, Bob, did you see this article in this Green Energy Times? Do you get into it?
I get those emails, I don't always read the article.
Never live on the same because
I got this out of the library. They're talking
Green
about
Energy Times.
He brings a scholar.
There are copies of the updated budget.
That's great.
Yeah, we need to do something right at that time.
I was telling Bill.
That's pretty cool.
I just paid $3.89.
Yeah, I've got
Way better than a lot of plastic.
about the fire department.
Look at that.
I mean, I never. That's because
What did you notice?
Just some words left out.
Probably accidentally deleted it when I was revising it.
He's a very good copy editor. I need no, I just No, that's not till end of April. I'm gonna. No,
Well, to be fair, there is,
we could talk about it probably in a.
Less public situation.
The updated copies of the
Right, that's right. Everyone can know about my vacation.
I know the budget's the revenue.
I feel unclear.
Georgia for this one.
Ooh, really?
something, just something. Archery.
I've only seen that movie a couple times.
Yeah, Hallmark. It's on Hallmark.
Lisa and Julia, I heard you roped my brother back into lacrosse
He
again.
roped himself.
He made it sound like it maybe wasn't all his.
Tripped and fell. I think it's his idea.
I was like, did they rope you back into it? He's like, yeah.
He even offered to coordinate, so.
He did mention he has to change the practice nights away from golf league nights.
From what nights? Oh, golf.
They have to be Monday and Thursday, not Tuesday. We're working on changing select board meetings from Tuesdays to any other night.
Could you just change the crop?
I mean, it's only been like 1760. We did change it because I was like,
Oh, this is, oh, okay. That is.
yeah, well, I mean, it's been Tuesday
Is
to
it?
golf league.
I'm just,
That's pretty important. not quite as official as, it seems easy to change select board.
Oh, sure.
Try to get a bunch of contractors on which what night they play golf.
Usually have to work on it.
All right, welcome back. It's 6 PM. Thanks for joining us again. We're back for the joint budget committee and select board meeting. I'm Tyler Ward, and I was not here earlier. And with me are fellow select board members Bill Taylor and Bill Kennedy. We have town administrator McStay here at the table with us. Also Ali Kreutz, assistant to the town administrator. I see some department heads in the audience for anybody that's watching online. I see Fashfar Shahi in the IT department, Danica Malone from planning, and down in the front, Lisa Betts from the recreation department, Corinne Chronopoulos from the library. I see our finance director.
There's 3 pages.
Well, Mandy's on the break.
Of course, more paper.
Lily Gilligan, and Chief Gennard is back there, Police Chief Gennard, and Assistant Town Administrator, Department of Public Works Director, Seth McLean's in the back there, and I think that's it, right?
Everybody.
Got everybody? Okay, at this point, I'll hand over to Carl Mabzino, Chair of the Budget Committee, to introduce the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Tyler. See if I can remember everybody on our budget committee. In that corner, we have Mandy Sliver. Leslie Lewis, there's Leslie. Leslie Lewis is on the back wall. And in the front row, we have Ron McIntyre. Operating from the other end there, we have Don Markhurst, Mary Clark, Rick Lesser, Al Lenos, and Andrew Osterman. So tonight, we're going to go over the budget and through the warrant articles, and we'll hopefully take a vote to see the recommendation coming from both the select board and the budget committee. And with that, I'll turn over to
So, yes, I'm sorry, we need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'd make a motion to open the public hearing on the budget.
That's our map.
All those in favor? Aye.
All right, so this is very similar to the presentation, in fact, nearly identical, but with some updates to the presentation I gave at the end of February. So if you've already heard it, my apologies, but I never reinvent the wheel whenever I can avoid it, so. Starting at the end, which is, again, something that I'm loath to do, but many people ask for. So just to really set the stage for what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is the estimate of the municipal portion of the tax rate if all the warrant articles were to pass. So what we have here on the left are the warrant articles netted out as far as what we would need to raise and appropriate through taxation. So Article 3, the total amount that we would need to raise and appropriate is $8,688,185. I'm happy to send this PowerPoint to anyone who needs it, so don't worry. Article 4, this is the recycling pay-as-you-throw fund. That's a $0 tax impact article because all the money there is raised through the sale of the pay-as-you-throw blue bags. The trust funds in Article 5, that's the large collection of the trust, capital reserve and expendable trust funds. That's $764,700 to be raised through taxation. Article 6, the roadway improvements fund. That's the, I want to say, the 7th of the 10-year plan for $400,000. Article 7, the upper hall fund is $0. We'll be looking to raise and appropriate $5,000 from the general fund. Article 8 is to establish the bridges, culverts, and dams, and also to fund that with $237,000. That is actually a mistake. This should net out to $0 because this is the funds that are already in the general fund that came to us through the Infrastructure Act. Article 9 is ambulance service, $450,834. That represents the town of Peterborough's share of 911 service. Article 11, elected officials as the supervisors of the checklist. This article seeks to change their annual compensation and raise and appropriate additional funds for that outside of what's included in the operating budget. And Article 13, the town clerk. This is the COLA and merit for the town clerk for the current fiscal year. So the total amount to raise and appropriate will be $10,317,246.
Excuse me, you said you had a mistake up there in Article 8, is that?
I do. It does not, I'm sorry, it does not affect the bottom line. The bottom line I took from the worksheet. So, here's on the right-hand side, some potential scenarios for tax impact if all articles pass. And this is with gigantic asterisks and caveats because there's a lot of moving parts in setting the tax rate. But if, based on the current assessed valuation, if the select board chose not to use any fund balance in the fall, the tax rate would be $11.68, which would be an increase of $2.51 over the current tax rate. If there is no use of fund balance and a 10% increase to a total assessed valuation, the tax rate would be $10.62, which is an increase of $1.45 over the current year. If the select board were to use $500,000 in fund balance and we saw a 10% increase to assessed valuation, the town tax rate would be $10.10, which is an increase of 93 cents over the current year. And if there was $500,000 in fund balance used and a 15% increase in assessed valuation, you would see a town tax rate of $9.66, which would be an increase of 49 cents over the current year. Again, lots of caveats there because there's a lot of moving parts in setting a tax rate. A lot can happen between now and late fall when we get to that. So here's a summary of the process that we've gone through so far. Sorry about the small font. I was really trying to squeeze it all in onto one page. But we began this process in September of '22 with town staff beginning to create the draft fiscal year '24 budget. Staff were advised to propose responsible budgets which sought to fund the services the town currently provides as they're being provided. There was some special consideration given to staff retention, filling vacant positions, and preparing for known retirements. In fall of '22, staff began to meet with the Capital Improvements Committee. They developed a forward-looking capital improvements plan that avoided using debt service and leases. In November of '22, staff met with the Select Board to review the economic conditions and set the basis for the FY24 budget. Many of the things that were considered were electricity, diesel, gasoline, heating fuel, propane, and wood pellet costs, which of course have increased dramatically recently. Health insurance, pension, property liability, and workers' compensation insurance costs affect every aspect of the budgets that we consider, as does setting the COLA and the merit. These recommendations were made based on the Northeast Consumer Price Index and the 2023 Social Security COLA increase. In December of '22, a complete draft of the total budget was posted to the town's website and submitted to the Select Board and the Budget Committee. And beginning in January of '23, town staff presented their proposed budgets to the Select Board and the Budget Committee at joint meetings that were held every week. February 28th, the Budget Committee and the Select Board accepted the proposed budget and voted to move it to public hearing, and here we are. So just to back up a bit and make sure that we're all on the same page, let's go over the form of the budget. The proposed total budget is made up of multiple budgets which are managed with 4 different fund types, each with different funding sources. So what you have, if you picked up one of the handouts, is the total budget for the town of Peterborough. That it's in 2 parts. You have the expenditure budget, which is the 30-some-odd page packet, and then the much smaller, unfortunately slimmer, revenue budget. The general fund budget is funded by fees and taxation and is voted on at town meeting. It includes the following departments and services. So administration, which is also assessing and human services. The finance department, which includes all the debt service and the town-wide insurance expenses. The planning and building budget, which includes the smaller budgets of the EDA and the Conservation Commission. The town clerk, which also includes the elections. Information technology and geographic information systems, also referred to as IT and GIS. Recreation, tax supported. Recreation, remember, is funded partially by tax dollars and partially by fees. The library, the police department, fire and emergency management, and Public Works and Administration and General Services. All of these are in the general fund. Then we have the enterprise funds, the water and wastewater budgets. These are funded 100% by user fees that are included with the general fund when it's voted on by town meeting, but it is funded entirely by user fees. The ambulance service budget is a revolving fund, which is funded 80% by user fees, which includes insurance, self-pay, and municipal customers, and 20% by a separate warrant article voted on at town meeting. The budget is presented with the total budget for review, but it's not voted on at town meeting. This is a budget that is administered by the select board. Recreation budget is also partially supported by the revolving fund. It is funded 100% by user fees. That includes the community center. And that budget is presented again with the total budget for review, but is not voted on at town meeting and is administered by the select board. The Public Education Government Station Revolving Fund, or PEG Station Revolving Fund, is 100% supported by Comcast TV franchise fees and is presented with the total budget, but is not voted on at town meeting. That is again administered by the select board. That is the budget that serves the streaming that we do, the broadcast over Comcast Channel 22, and all of the equipment that goes along with that. And the pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund is 100% supported by the purchase of pay-as-you-throw bags, but it is voted on by a separate warrant article at town meeting. So, all right, so what are the cost drivers in the proposed total budget? Really, they break down to three categories. You have energy costs, which have gone up $83,980. Debt service has increased by $89,166, and personnel costs have increased by $1,327,112. The total of these three categories is $1,500,269, but the actual expenditure increase from the current year to next is $1,217,471. To me, this speaks to the very responsible budgets that the department directors brought forward. They were very careful and really only considered increases that were absolutely necessary. So, again, let's just, for a review, these are all the components of the total budget: the general fund, the water sewer enterprise funds, the ambulance, recreation, and PEG station revolving funds, and the pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund. But from here on out, we're really going to be focused just on the general fund. And you can see that in this slide shows the expenditures minus the revenues to give the net raise and appropriation through taxation. And the only budgets that require, or only funds that require any tax support are the general fund at $8,688,165, and the ambulance revolving fund for $450,834. So a word on our estimated revenues before we get into the breakdown by department. All the revenues in the proposed budget are estimates based on what we've actually received in fiscal year 23. But many of those include windfall grants that we cannot expect to be receiving in the future. Included in that is a refund from the New Hampshire retirement system of $26,504. The federal infrastructure grant funds, a portion of which we will be, like I said, moving into the bridges, culverts, and dams, or hopefully moving into the bridges, culverts, and dams capital reserve fund. The total of that was $402,324. And then we received a MAST grant for $30,000. These revenues are not in the FY23 budget, but they do count as revenues when we move forward. So, showing them here in comparison to the proposed FY24 budget makes the comparison between the 2 years appear more dramatic than it actually is. And also, we have some revenues that were overstated or will not be taken that were in the FY23 budget and need to be adjusted for accuracy. Those specifically are $100,000 in the Department of Public Works budget, which was a transfer out of the South Peterborough TIF district for engineering that we are not doing this year. We're going to be doing it probably in FY25. And also there's $57,057 in debt service payments and contributions from MCH, from Nanoc Community Hospital. That's an overstatement of a debt service payment. It actually wasn't that much because it was the final year of the debt service, and so we needed to reduce that revenue, but didn't in the budget. So again, makes it look a little bit more dramatic than it actually is. So here's the net change breakdown by department. I'm not going to go through all of this because we really have gone through this in quite a bit of detail in prior meetings, but this is a summary of the biggest changes in each of the departments. But what it really comes down to across all the departments are, again, those personnel costs that we were talking about. And I touched on it briefly, and I'm definitely going to get into it in a little bit more detail here. So personnel costs, the biggest chunk of that is proposed cost of living adjustment and merit pay. The next piece are the market adjustments that needed to be made in fiscal year 23 budget and will be needed in fiscal year 24 and beyond. And then there's also the accommodations we need to make regarding retirements. We have some positions that went from full-time positions to part-time when the staff in those positions retired. We were able to keep them on by keeping them part-time. But now that they are retiring out entirely, they are going back to full-time positions so that we have a chance to fill them. And then there's the increase in the health insurance costs. COLA and merit, we're proposing a 5% cost of living adjustment and merit of 3.7%. This has been applied to all the budgets. The COLA is applied to every employee's hourly rate. The merit will be assigned after the employee has been evaluated and is determined that they have met or exceeded expectations and goals that they were given. Any excess in the merit pool will be used to make market rate adjustment to hourly rates after a salary survey has been completed. Now, we did this not in a vacuum. We also, in addition to looking at the Northeast CPI and the Social Security COLA, we also did a survey of area towns. These are the responses that I got in January. A couple of them came in December, but mostly in January. What other towns in the region would be doing with their COLA and merit. Now, this is all in response to changes in the employment market. Following COVID, there are far more positions and far fewer employees to fill them. Governments are now competing with private sector for the same employee, and government benefits are no longer attractive enough to make up for the lower wages. Most of the jobs now require higher level of skill and certification, and our wages simply have not kept up. What you see on the left is an actual ad that the Jaffrey Police Department is running right now. They are starting a uncertified officer at $58,281, and if they're certified, they'll start them at $60,000. Right now, the town of Peterborough starting salary for an uncertified officer is $49,000. As you can imagine, we're having trouble attracting people at that. And that's not just the police department, although that is certainly where we've seen a lot of vacancies over the last few years. But it's really across the board. Anywhere that you look, we've made salary adjustments to retain staff or fill positions. We did a lot of them in the recreation department this past year, but we also did them in public works. And again, with the retirees that we're expecting this year. Many of those positions that we have filled with part-timers will now be going back to full-time so that we'll be able to hopefully attract someone to fill that. Our goal through all this, though, is employee retention. The directive from the Select Board and the Budget Committee for years now has been to do more with less. Employees in every department are highly skilled and cross-trained, making them more valuable to us and more valuable to other communities and also in the private sector, because employees who can do more are worth more and they save us more. Our staff have replaced more expensive outside contract work. A great deal of time and resources goes into training employees, and so keeping their wages competitive keeps them with us. When employees do leave, competitive wages will attract new employees. And so in summary, the budget proposal that we've proposed is in response to the changing economy. The costs to provide the same service at the same level have gone up. 3 categories of spending have driven most of the increase, but they are not the only areas where costs have gone up. The directors have very carefully considered their budgets to minimize those increases without cutting services. Significant changes in the employment market require more resources to retain and attract staff. And funding succession planning is necessary to ensure a smooth transition and continuity of services. Part-time retirees have left or are leaving, and positions are being converted back to full-time. The Capital Improvement Plan Committee has recommended a robust funding schedule to avoid future bonding and leasing, and this allows for the smoothing of year-to-year appropriation of funds for large capital purchases. Anyone's got any questions? Again, really covered this in great detail over the last few weeks. I can't but be impressed by the work that the department directors have done. They've really brought forward what I believe is a very responsible budget.
Nicole, just going back to that point you made about the hiring of police department, do we offer more money for a certified person?
We do, yes.
But I'm assuming it would be kind of relative to those numbers as well, I mean, for our certified police.
Yep.
No, sir. Certified officers, we've started them around 54, 55.
So really, you're looking at the same.
Right, 49 versus 50.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, the various changes that we talked about last week have all been incorporated into.
All incorporated, yes.
Could I ask how we got from the 3,098,000, it says total water and sewer, to 2,660,000 with the latest figures? I just don't recall.
Seth and I had a meeting with the DES in mid-February, and they made it clear that the first payment for the Cold Stone Springs project will not be due this coming fall, but the fall of 2024. So we've removed that first bond payment out, the loan payment for Cold Stone Springs. It's 41% of that project is funded with loans from the DES and 59% from two different grants from the DES.
Again, those are user fees that pay for that.
Yes.
Not tax dollars.
All right. With that, we can, if you're ready, we can move to the review of the warrant and votes to recommend.
Did you want to take a vote on the budget at this point, or put that in there?
Very first one. Very first
Sorry,
one.
I should have said that a moment earlier.
Right there. All right, so the very first article that we'll have to vote on, just for everyone, Article 1 is always the officers to be elected. Article 2 is always proposed zoning amendments, which brings us to Article 3, which must always be the budget. So the budget for fiscal year '24, a total gross appropriation, so that means just the expenditure budget. This cannot include the revenue. This is the language that is required by the Department of Revenue Administration. Is a total of $14,791,950 to support the general municipal water and wastewater operations. This is beginning July 1 of 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Does not include appropriations in special or individual articles that are addressed separately on the warrant. And so I guess I'll turn to the select board first to ask for a vote of recommendation.
You want me to make a motion and have a second and then ask for favors?
Or you simply, you can simply ask for a vote to recommend,
Okay,
yes or no.
Nicole, is there an opportunity for any questions at this point?
Absolutely. Always.
Before we vote on each one, we'll just present that as an opportunity.
Does the select board wish to vote in favor of this article?
I do.
Three of us. And the budget committee? Carl?
Is there any other question from the budget committee on this? Do I have a motion to vote?
Second.
All in favor of supporting this on the budget committee, raise your hand. Let's see. All but one.
Yes, for opposed, for abstaining?
Do we have opposed? We have one.
So the vote was?
8-1.
Next article is a pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund, $131,000. Again, I can't show revenues in the warrant articles, but this is entirely offset by the funds that are raised through the sale of the pay-as-you-throw bags.
Any votes from the select board?
Yes.
Those in favor from the budget committee, raise your hand, please. It's unanimous from the budget committee.
Article 5, capital reserve and expendable trust funds. This totals to $764,700. These fund various funds individually, $18,500 to be placed in the GIS capital reserve fund, $80,000 to be placed in the police department fleet management capital reserve fund, $210,000 to be placed in the fire department apparatus and equipment capital reserve fund, $1,200 to be placed in the winter operations expendable trust fund, $375,000 to be placed in the fleet management capital reserve fund, $65,000 to be placed in the recreation department equipment capital reserve fund, and $15,000 to be placed in the Adams Pool improvement capital reserve fund.
All those in favor on the select board? Aye.
All those in favor from the budget committee, raise your hand, please. And those opposed? So that's 8-1. By the way, the reason I ask everybody to raise their hands as opposed to just speaking is because for the records, it's hard to keep track if you're off camera. So that's why we do that.
Next question, what is the total amount of money in that fire apparatus, this equipment capital reserve fund?
Right now,
Yes. Doesn't change my vote or anything, just.
After we pay what has been approved by the selectmen, $130.
Oh, yes. So this is a.
That is or isn't enough to buy a fire truck.
Thank you.
You mean an electric one?
Yeah.
Those Matchbox ones are really nice.
They're probably expensive. All right, Article 6.
Just as a point of clarification, could you, Nicole, just for the benefit of the public, very quickly give us a distinction between a capital reserve fund and an expendable trust fund? And could you also tell us who controls those funds?
Sure. So the second part of your question is actually a lot easier to answer than the first part. The second part of the question, who controls them, they are put into the custody of the trustees of the trust fund, but depending on how they've been established, you can have either the library trustees or the selectmen be the agents to expend those funds. It all depends on how they were established at town meeting, excuse me. If you're not careful to have a body establish at town meeting to expend those, then it falls to town meeting to be the agents to expend. So fortunately, we don't have any of those. Otherwise, they'd be locked up pretty tight. As far as the first part, the difference between a capital reserve fund and expendable trust fund, it really goes to purpose. Capital is typically for capital purchases, so equipment, buildings, things of that nature. Expendable trust funds is a little bit more open-ended. Those can be for particular activities, like for instance, we have the winter expendable trust fund, winter operations expendable trust fund. That is to assist with removing snow, and whatever it takes to do that, whether it's paying for contractors or buying additional salt, something that we didn't have enough budgeted for, plow breaks or what have you. So that's really, when you get down to it, that's a big difference.
Thank you.
And there's different sections of law, of course, that enable that, either of those funds. So speaking of, Article 6, roadway system upgrades capital reserve fund, $400,000. This is, again, I believe it's year 7 of the 10-year plan. Maybe slight nod coming from Seth, I think that's correct. It's like Selectmen.
Select board votes.
Yep.
Yes. 3.
Those in favor from the Budget Committee, raise your hand, please. It's all
Unanimous.
Yes.
Article 7, Upper Hall Expendable Trust Fund, $5,000. This is to create an expendable trust fund pursuant to RSA 31:19-A, to be known as the Upper Hall Expendable Trust Fund. We would like to fund this with $5,000 from the general fund, which represents a small amount of the money that we collect in fees for the rental of the Upper Hall.
Board votes.
Yep.
Yes. 3.
Those from the Budget Committee in favor, raise your hand,
Quick
please.
question first.
Yes.
It says no amount to be raised through taxation.
Correct.
The money is already
It's already in
It's
the
in the
general fund, yes.
current.
Yep, and restricted fund balance.
With that, those in favor from the Budget Committee, raise your hand, please. I see 9.
Article 8, Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Expendable Trust Fund, $237,830. This will establish a expendable trust fund to be known as the Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of retaining funds for the orderly repair, replacement, and upkeep of existing bridges, culverts, and dams. This money to come for the proceeds of the unanticipated bridge aid, which was accepted by the Select Board at a public hearing held on December 20th, 2022, to be used for this purpose, with no additional amount needed to be raised through taxation.
Yep.
Those in favor from the Budget Committee of Article 8, raise your hand, please. Again, I see no 9.
Article 9, the Ambulance Service Revolving Fund, $450,834. This is, again, to fund the town of Peterborough's portion of costs to operate the 911 emergency response ambulance service for calendar year 2023. Select Board recommends this appropriation by vote of...
Those in favor from the Budget Committee, raise your hand. I see 8. Those opposed? 1.
Article 10, this seeks to establish a capital reserve fund to be known as the Facilities and Grounds Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of retaining funds for the orderly repair and replacement and upkeep of existing facilities and buildings to designate the Select Board as agents to expend. This does not seek to raise any dollars, which is why there's no request for a vote by the Budget Committee.
Select board.
Yep.
3.
Article 11, this is to change the terms of compensation for the supervisors of checklist. $5,250 would need to be raised in addition to the funds that are already included in the general fund budget. So this will change the terms of compensation for the supervisor of the checklist from $2,250 a year to $3,000 a year in a regular election year, or $4,000 in an election year that includes state and federal elections, plus $1,000 a year that the voter list heard occurs, which is once every 10 years. There are 3 elected supervisors of the checklist, and this provision is for each supervisor of the checklist. And then furthermore, to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,250.
Select board. Yep. 3.
Those in favor from the Budget Committee, raise your hand, please. I see 9.
All right. Article 12 seeks to change the terms of compensation for the elected town clerk. Any newly elected town clerk shall begin service with a salary level equal to the minimum executive salary structure grade 6, and benefits including health insurance, dental insurance, pension, life insurance, short-term and long-term disability insurance, and Social Security. After the completion of each year of service, the town clerk shall receive a salary increase equal to the cost of living adjustment increase which was approved at the prior town meeting. Where applicable, all provisions of this warrant article shall be reported to the current town clerk. This is establishing essentially setting in stone how the town is currently compensating the town clerk.
I have a question.
We have a question. Oh, town clerk. Yeah.
Don't.
I'd like to see at the very end where it's asking to receive a salary increase equal to the cost of living adjustment COLA increase, to add merit to that, because otherwise you're gonna have to be going back every year to get an increase to bring the town clerk up in the salary schedule. It will never move.
100% of the merit or 50% or who would be
100% of the
gauged?
merit.
Who would gauge that?
Well,
That's what we went back and forth with for quite a bit.
Yeah, we had quite a discussion about it. Weren't you here for it?
Yeah.
Well, the people that, when we go through, say Nicole goes through each department head, and each department head goes through each individual employee and decides if they deserve merit. Since your boss is the voters of the town of Peterborough, shouldn't they be the ones that
Well,
decide?
but they would be voting it in.
Well, they'd be voting in right now. Say it's not a totally wonderful town clerk, and they decide not to vote that through in the future.
Well, then every year you're gonna have to go back with that. I thought we were trying to avoid that.
We don't know how to avoid that because that's the way it is.
You were going to town council, as I recall, to ask their opinion on this at some point, if my memory serves me.
Yeah, that's true.
I've had town council look at 5 versions of this article now.
The town clerk, the lawyer has looked at this. town
Yes,
attorney.
yes.
Would anybody on the budget committee or select board like to amend that to add that line about merit?
I think the answer that you provided is justifiable, that if the town wishes to, then a warrant article would be put forward to do that. So it could, the merit pay can still be given, but it has to go through a different procedure because it's not an employee.
Right. So we'll have that discussion next year as budget.
That's right, that will come up next year at the budget season.
All right. And
Yeah.
is the benefits, are those fully paid? I thought that's what came up last time. so-
As this article is written, they are 100% paid.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Select board's vote on this.
Since there isn't a money tag on this one, does it, well, I guess the budget committee should weigh in on this.
That's true.
Well, there is. Salary structure grade level 6.
Yeah.
There is a money tag.
Yeah, that's true.
And cost of living.
If we're agreed on that, let's see from the budget committee, all those in favor, raise your hand. I see 8. Those opposed? 1.
Article 13, this provides a cost of living adjustment and merit increase for the elected town clerk of $8,297. This is because the previous article isn't already in place. We would need to raise both cost of living and merit for this year. And the impact outside of the budget for all of that is $8,297.
No questions, and select board's vote?
Yep.
Aye.
Budget committee in favor, please raise your hand. I see 8. Those opposed? 1.
Okay, Article 14 seeks to establish a town forest. These are the properties located off of Greenfield Road that are commonly known as the sawmill properties. They are 3 different parcels. And further, this is to authorize the Conservation Commission to manage the property in accordance with RSA 31:112, and to authorize the placement of any proceeds that may accrue from forest management in the Conservation Commission's account to accumulate pursuant to RSA 31:113. And once established, the town forest cannot be abolished in whole or in part without a 2/3 vote of town meeting. This is not a moneyed article, so we're only seeking selectmen vote to recommend.
I do have a question.
Yep.
Unrelated to money, well, obviously. Could parcels be added to the town forest that aren't connected to this, like another parcel in town? Or would
I-
that be
It would be a
town
new forest.
Okay. Select board, all those in
Yep.
favor? 3?
Is there any money required in terms of the maintenance of it?
Nope. At least not at this time. Article 15, this will re-adopt the optional veterans tax credit. There was a change to the laws that enabled the various veteran tax credits last year, so each town that wishes to grant their veterans more than a $50 credit needs to re-adopt this. So we are seeking a vote to re-adopt the optional veterans tax credit of $750 per year, and a selectmen's vote to approve.
Yep.
This is the same amount as we had last year.
Yeah, correct, yes, hasn't changed, it's the same that we most recently increased it to.
Let's do it.
Okay. And same reasoning behind the all veterans tax credit of $750.
Do it. 3?
Next one is Article 17 to revise the South Peterborough Tax Increment Finance District and Greater Downtown Tax Increment Finance District. So this would seek to expand the South Peterborough Tax Increment Finance District to include the following parcels. There will be a map that we put into the voting booth so people can see what we're looking to add. This is the written out language. And further, to move parcel U022-035 from the Greater Downtown Tax Increment Finance District to the South Peterborough Tax Increment Finance District. It had kind of ended up there when the parcels were merged.
And this was recommended by the EDA.
Yes.
Select board votes?
Yep.
3 in favor?
Question?
Bob Herrick-Smith, do the owners get notified that their property is in this article?
No, it doesn't change anything for them.
Mhm.
They will be taxed at the same rate as every other parcel in town.
Okay.
No notification requirements. And then Article 18, to revise the charter of the Advisory Budget Committee, which is very long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You all have that in the handouts, and if you don't have one, feel free to grab one. You can see it's quite extensive. Are there any questions about this?
Vote to recommend.
Yep.
Recommend 3.
The budget committee, who recommend, raise your hand, please.
There was just a typo there.
I'm sorry?
The sentence says the budget committee recommends this appropriation by vote of. It should
Oh,
be
it's
this
just because I
article.
copied and pasted it.
Should be this article,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
It says so.
Okay.
All right, we will make
correct
sure
that.
it says article. Let's take a look again. Those in favor for the budget committee, raise your hand. I see 8, and those opposed, 1.
And that is all the articles. And for the select board, I have, the way that they are set on the warrant right now, they are all set to go onto the ballot. Would you like them all to go onto the ballot? Would you like to see any of these at the open session?
The law doesn't require any of them to go on the open session.
No, nor does the town's charter.
Don, you had a question?
So if the budget passes on the town meeting day at the polls,
Yep.
we don't even have an open session then?
We will technically have to have one. The moderator will have to open the open session and then can immediately pass over the article and close the open session.
Unless there's petitions.
Unless it fails on the ballot, correct.
We've always had to do that. It was just during that 1 year of the pandemic where we put everything on the ballot and
2
we didn't want to
years.
see, we didn't
Yeah.
want to be anything.
But usually there's more than just one item.
Yeah.
So when would
It's
the,
usually a pretty large expenditure that.
Right.
when would the select board and budget committee vote on Article 19?
Article 19's on the, it's already been, yeah, it's just the.
No, I
it's the
realize
open
that, but
session.
the lines that say we vote.
You've already done it. You've already done it. It's
So we
already-
did it on
already-
March.
Article 3.
So we've already done that.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking, okay, so same vote.
Seeing that there's no major new expenses to vote on, I would vote in favor of moving it all, or leaving it all.
So that means that we're gonna be discussing 18 articles on
At the deliberative
the
session.
deliberative session.
Yep. On April 4th.
It would be anyways.
Would we?
Not if they're in the open
We
session.
put stuff in the open session.
Where is the deliberative session? Upstairs.
Upper hall, yeah. No, it's
All
been a
right, so is that a
while.
motion to put it all on the ballot? Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. All on the ballot. Gary?
I understand that the March 10th is the last day for a petition article.
March 14th, I believe is the last day.
Okay, that calendar date
That
has
may
been
have
changed. Are there any that we know of at this point, or can you say?
We haven't received any that would go for this section of the warrant. There's some that came in for zoning. I believe that period's closed now. That closed at the beginning of February.
Yeah.
But petition articles would be discussed at open session?
Potentially, yes. The
Oh,
selectmen.
we could put it on the ballot.
Depending, as long as it's, so the period has closed to receive, or will close on the 10th. I believe that's the one you're looking at.
Yes,
for
correct.
Petition warrant articles that require bonding or cost more than $100,000.
That's okay.
Yes. If it were a bond article, that would have to go to the open session based on the town's charter. Anything else, it's up to the selectmen's discretion to determine where it goes, whether it's on the open session or on the ballot. But yes, if an article comes in that would require some money, we would need to bring the budget committee back together with the selectmen to make a vote of whether or not to recommend that article.
Mandy?
Just as another point of mentioning, since we're at a public meeting, just wanted to double check when the filing period for election, for officers is.
March 22nd, it's Wednesday, through Friday, March 31st.
The office of the town clerk opens at what time on the 22nd?
8:30.
8:30?
And we're open till 5 on the 31st, just to get people who are signing up for office.
We recommend that somebody from the newspaper be there through that entire fall period to take pictures of everybody that goes through.
Set up a remote camera.
Yeah.
So, any more questions?
Yeah, Nicole, you mentioned earlier that the 23 budget versus 24 is 24 is a little bit higher than 23 because there are certain things that we got last year, most.
The revenues, yeah.
Right, mainly the infrastructure. Do we have any insight into any expectations of mainly the infrastructure bill showing up for some more dollars in 24, or do we have any insight to that at all?
There's a bill floating through, I think, the House right now, and I'm trying to remember the number, that would provide a little bit more money towards roads and bridges.
This is the State House or the federal?
This is the state, sorry, just the state.
Okay.
So they do have some more money from the last infrastructure bill. I'm not sure what the status of that bill currently is. And I don't know of any funds that are coming out of Washington anytime soon.
The mass grant not happening again?
No, the mass grants are that was a one-time
That
thing.
was one time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we got a motion and a second to put all these on to the ballot. All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye. So let it be written. Good.
You're all set?
And so we can close the public hearing if you're all.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that one.
A couple nice presentation, thank you. We had minutes.
7 minutes.
We had very thorough minutes that were,
February 21st.
I'd make a motion to approve those minutes from February 21st.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Regard to the budget committee portion of those minutes, all those in
I'll make that same
favor?
motion.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand, please. I see none. Have a motion to close the meeting. Second? Second, Leslie. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your participation in all this.
Sorry?
Did you make the motion to close?
No, Mandy did.
Mandy did, okay.
Worse always is.
Do you take it back?
I thought we already
Pick up yoga.